I still remember the sound of that drawer opening. It was ordinary, just wood sliding against wood. But in a single second, that sound changed my life. The envelope was gone. For years, I knew exactly where it sat, tucked carefully in the back of my desk drawer, wrapped in an old rubber band like something sacred. Inside wasn't just money, it was possibility. It was every late shift my grandfather worked, every sacrifice he made, every promise folded into paper. $60,000. My college fund, saved since the day I was born. When I walked into the kitchen, my heart was beating so hard I could barely hear myself think. Mom sat at the table scrolling through her phone, coffee steaming beside her. Dad was behind a newspaper like it was any normal morning. "Where's my college fund?" I asked. No panic, no confusion. Mom took a sip of coffee. "We used it." Just like that. 3 words. I stared at her. "You... what?" Dad folded the paper slowly. "Your sister's wedding," he said calmly. "Venues are expensive. Catering, dresses, decorations. You'll understand one day." For a moment, I honestly thought I'd misheard him. That was my money. Mom sighed like I was inconveniencing her. "Stop being selfish. Families sacrifice for each other. Families sacrifice." Funny how sacrifice always seemed to mean me. I worked 2 part-time jobs. I paid rent in the house I grew up in. I covered bills they said were teaching responsibility. And suddenly everything made sense. I wasn't learning responsibility. I was funding someone else's perfect life. I walked out of that house before I said something I'd regret. The air outside felt cold against my skin. I kept walking, past trimmed lawns, past expensive cars, past picture-perfect houses. Everything looked normal. Everything looked fake. Eventually, I ended up at the little diner near campus, the one with cracked red booths and coffee that tasted stronger than it should. I sat there staring at a glass of water. 2 jobs, no savings, no future plan, no idea what came next. That's when I picked up my phone and called my grandfather. His voice came through warm and familiar. "Pumpkin, you never call this late." Suddenly, the words caught in my throat. "No, Grandpa," I whispered. "Everything's not okay." I told him everything: the missing money, the wedding, the rent, the exhaustion. I expected shock, maybe sadness. Instead, there was silence, long silence. Then, "They took the fund?" "Yes." "All of it?" "Yes." Another pause. Then I heard him exhale. That money was never theirs. His voice had changed, not louder, just sharper. "Write everything down," he said. "Everything." The next morning, we met at the diner. Grandpa was already sitting there with coffee and a folder in front of him. I handed him my notes. He read every page quietly. Then he closed the folder and looked up at me. "Pumpkin," he said, "they think they played you." I blinked. "What?" He slid the folder toward me. Inside were bank documents, statements, account records, legal papers, and one line that changed everything. The account had been created under my name, not theirs. Mine. My chest tightened. "So?" Grandpa nodded. "What they did wasn't family sacrifice." He leaned forward. It was theft. The word hit differently. Because suddenly I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I wasn't overreacting. I'd been betrayed. And for the first time since opening that empty drawer, I felt hope. Then Grandpa smiled. Not warmly. Strategically. "Your sister's wedding is in 3 weeks, right?" I nodded slowly. "Good." He leaned back. Then we let the truth arrive at exactly the right moment. The next few weeks felt surreal. The house transformed into wedding headquarters. Flowers arrived daily, boxes piled up everywhere, guests called non-stop. Mom floated around giving orders, Dad acted like king of the world, and me? I became invisible. Again. Pick up the decorations. Grab the dry cleaning. Pay your part of the utilities. I didn't argue. I just wrote things down. Receipts, comments, conversations, everything. Because for once, silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. The night before the wedding, my suitcase sat packed beside my bed. Not because I was running away, because I already knew something. After tomorrow, I wasn't coming back. Grandpa called. "You ready?" I stared at the ceiling. "I think so." "No," he said firmly. "Not think. No." Yeah, the venue looked like a dream. White flowers, crystal lights, music drifting through warm summer air. My sister looked like she had stepped out of a magazine cover. Guests smiled, cameras flashed, people kept talking about my parents. How generous. How loving. What amazing parents. I almost laughed. Then came the speeches, and eventually, the microphone reached me. I stood up slowly, champagne glass in hand. Every eye turned toward me. My sister smiled confidently. Mom and Dad looked proud. I took a breath. "First," I said, "congratulations," polite applause, "and thank you to my parents for giving my sister this beautiful wedding." More smiles. Then I paused. It must have taken a lot of sacrifice. Dad shifted. Mom's smile tightened. I continued. "You see, while my sister was planning her dream wedding, I was working 2 jobs, paying rent, wondering why my future suddenly disappeared." The room became very still. I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, and placed it on the podium. Because I recently discovered my college fund, $60,000 saved by my grandfather, was used without my permission to pay for this wedding. Silence. Absolute silence. Then whispers. My sister stood up immediately. "You're ruining my wedding." I looked at her, calmly. "No," I swallowed. "You ruined my future." And then something happened I'll never forget. My grandfather stood, slowly, steadily. He looked around the room. "I saved that money for her," he said, "for years. And I trusted it would be protected." He looked at my parents. I was wrong. Suddenly, people weren't looking at me anymore. They were looking at them. The smiles disappeared. The perfect image cracked. And once truth enters a room, it becomes impossible to ignore. The weeks after that changed everything. Legal conversations happened, accounts were reviewed, documents were examined, and eventually, what belonged to me was restored. But something else happened too. Something bigger. I moved into my own apartment. Nothing fancy. White walls, big windows, morning sunlight. Peace. Real peace. I re-enrolled in school. Started building a future that actually belonged to me. Mom called, Dad called, messages piled up. I didn't answer. Not because I hated them, not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood something. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes healing is quiet. Sometimes it looks like choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else. Months later, I walked across campus carrying books under my arm. Students hurried past talking about exams and weekend plans. The sun warmed my face, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel behind. I didn't feel broken. I felt free. I stopped outside my classroom doors and smiled, because I finally understood something. They didn't steal my future. They only delayed it. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop carrying what was never yours to carry, then keep walking forward.